Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build, 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 this time power, this time to build power, this time to build power, this time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton.
And this is Nate Drolet.
And it's Friday, so it's movie night. Nate, do you have favorite movie candy?
What are the ones that are Whoppers?
Whoppers. Ooh, Whoppers are a good one. I hadn't thought about that. Malted milk balls.
Yeah, I love the texture.
Yeah, I do too. I was gonna say Milk Duds, but maybe I'm changing to Whoppers because I like the crunchy as opposed to the stuck in your teeth through the whole movie experience.
Yeah. Though I haven't had Butterfinger BBs in a long time. I don't know if they still make those.
I don't know that I ever have.
I feel like it's just the Butterfingers. It's their answer to Whoppers.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've had them in 20 years. I don't know if they've made them in 20 years.
There's still some sitting in some movie theater somewhere in Iowa.
Exactly. I was going to say like Topeka, Kansas.
Whoppers it is.
Whoppers.
Yeah, I like it. Today we're talking about Devotion, which features Jakob Schubert. It's by Yucca Films. You can find it on the Mammut YouTube channel. And, we were joking about the title because we just did Passion with Jonathan Segrist and now Devotion with Jakob Schubert. And I just saw Adrenaline with...
I thought the same thing.
I haven't watched it, but Adrenaline with Daniel Woods and Nina Williams. There's this like one-word title trend happening right now. Does 3 make a trend? Maybe it does.
It feels like it. And they're all in all caps as well, I think.
Maybe. Yeah. Interesting. That's interesting too. I just listened to probably my contender for album of the year so far, which is Alligator Bites Never Heal by Doechii.
It's a great name.
Yeah, it's great. And all of her titles are in all caps. I just noticed that the other day. Interesting. That's the way. Everything's all caps now. You're just yelling all the time.
Everything is an MF Doom tribute title.
Exactly. What did you think about this going in? Like at first glance, what were your thoughts? What were your hopes for this?
I was excited. I like Jakob.
Yeah.
I've always been really impressed with his climbing. And 2 years ago, I had some friends come into town, husband and wife, to come see the World Cup. And the wife, both are total climbing nerds, but the wife, she brought a backpack. She was like, I want to get my favorite competitors to sign it. So she had a backpack and a Sharpie. And she's like, and I have no problem looking like a total goober. I'm gonna be unashamed about this.
Yeah.
And it was actually a lot of fun for me to watch because, one, she was in no way ashamed of it. Like, she was also very respectful, waiting for them to just be like standing around or whatever. But it was fun seeing the competitors respond because everyone was a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But when she approached Jakob, we were like walking together and Jakob's walking by. She was like, oh, Jakob, would you please sign my backpack? And he just turned around and lit up. He was like, oh my God, really? He was like, yeah, of course. And like signed it, huge smile on his face. I think he even said thank you as he gave it back to her. And I was like, okay, like that's it. Jakob's in my good book. Like it was just such this wholesome thing. It was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. And so I was very excited for this. Also, Jakob's super strong and it's just fun watching really strong climbers perform.
Yeah, I wanted to know more about him. Like, even though there's like, he did Project Big on live stream and, he's put a lot of things out there, especially in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really feel like I knew much about him. So I was hoping I got a glimpse into who he is. one of the things we do know is that he's one of the older competitors out there, which is wild to even say because he's 33 years old.
Yeah.
I just looked it up this morning, actually, and I did my first 513 at 33.
Huh.
And I really started sport climbing at 32. So I was Jakob's age when I really got started trying to push my grade limits. So it's wild thinking he's one of the older competitors out there. But that's one of the reasons I wanted to know more about him. You know, he's seems a little more reserved and not as like, you know, he's not a TikTok star kind of a thing. Like we don't get to see him all the time. So I just wanted to know more, and I was excited about it for that. Tell me about your first thoughts. Like once you were watching, what were you thinking? What caught you?
I thought the opening was such a funny juxtaposition.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that actually caught my eye was it starts off and his words and his facial expression seem kind of different because he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this is the life of a pro climber. We're driving into rain and mist and fog and it's cold and maybe we'll be able to get to climb." But he's saying this with a huge smile on his face.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it immediately cuts to him just like staring off into the void, silence. Like as it's raining, his down jacket's soaked.
Yeah.
But then he goes to like start trying to like dry the boulder and climb on it. And it does that a few times. It then is cutting to the interview with his girlfriend. And they're like, how many medals has he won? Like, how winning is he? And she just starts giggling. She's like, I knew I should have done this. I'm a huge fan, but, you know, and it's this very lighthearted thing. And then it cuts to this very heavy music, like, dun, 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 dun. And it's all these action shots of him in competition. And then it goes to another coach, and it's just pure silence. And he's like, he's got at least 2 world championships, da 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 da, like more action shots, like just this very comical like juxtaposition, and I liked that a lot. It has like a serious tone while also being kind of playful.
Yeah, I liked that they were showing that the people around him, like the people closest to him, aren't focused on his achievements and his medals and his podiums, and they weren't sure of the number. They weren't sure how many things he's won, you know? Like that really sets you up to see him, I think, more as a human, less as a climber who's achieved these major things.
Totally.
Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, what were your initial thoughts?
That disposition that you're describing, like him being really smiley and the people around him not really, you know, knowing exactly how much he's achieved. I immediately started drawing comparisons to like other like really major athletes that I've seen in interviews who are really relaxed about it and are just like happy to watch film of themselves competing and are getting excited about watching these films, and they're just smiling, and they're very pointed in what they're saying, but they look very casual doing it. So for me, it looked like Michael Jordan interviews, Wayne Gretzky interviews, Usain Bolt interviews, where they're really casual. They're not like super aggressive. I feel like the second tier athletes are always a little more aggressive than the top tier athletes who feel pretty secure in where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And his disposition sort of gave me that same feeling. So that's definitely the first thought I had, was like, oh, I like this guy seems like somebody I would just want to hang out with. And maybe we don't even have to talk about climbing all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, also, I just want to point out, you were talking about watching films of themselves. The shot of him like watching himself in the Olympics is like kind of adorable. Just like he's just got like that just really playful smile. Like also Jakob in glasses to me is just funny. Like it's him.
For some reason, I love that he wears glasses all the time. Like, it makes me. I've thought for the last few years it would be cool if my eyes start going bad and I need glasses. I don't know why I've thought that, but it makes me think it even more.
Yeah, it's because I think in the World Cups it's him and Manon Healy who Manon will wear glasses for forerunning, or not forerunning, for previewing the sport climbs. But then she takes them off to actually climb. It's like Clark Kent to Superman kind of vibe. And it's funny, I feel like I never see him wear glasses until when he's done climbing and he's like sitting over in the, finalist chairs watching everyone else. He'll just have glasses on.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know why. I just find it hilarious because it feels like these two different personalities. Maybe that's too many 90s movies of, like they take off the glasses and it's like different person.
Yeah, I did. I also thought, and this is a bit of criticism, but I thought there were a lot of like cliches used to tell the story, like when he was a kid, he was like this. And just lots of like devices that I think are overused. But I also like those devices as part of a profile. Like ESPN has this whole series of profiles of athletes, and they're all kind of formulaic. But I watch them all because they give me the information I want about the athlete. So in terms of like an artistic film, I felt like it had a lot of cliches, but in terms of a profile of an athlete, they were the right things.
No, I could totally see that. One thing I do appreciate is how much we heard from him. And it wasn't just, everyone else kind of talking about him. There was this one common theme that kind of stuck through everything of just enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before I had watched this, my immediate thought, because I didn't know a whole lot about Jakob, I thought this was going to be similar to the Pechi Usibiaga segment in Dosage 5, where famously, and this might even be the title of that segment, Patchy's like, I am a masochist for training.
Yeah.
And the whole time he just looks run down, and he's doing a ton of work, just seems exhausted, and it's almost like I have to do this work if I'm going to compete. If I'm going to do it, I have to be here. Like, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with all this pain and suffering. But with Jakob, I mean, even him talking about switching from soccer to climbing as a kid, he was like, oh, soccer was okay, but, it's like you barely got the ball ever and just wasn't always all that much fun. Yeah, you got to run all the time. He's like, but climbing, every session, I got to have all the fun.
Yeah.
And it still feels that way when he talks about he was constantly excited about everything he was doing. He talks about the younger climbers that he climbs with. He's like, yes, like they are my competition, but also they're the people that are going to make me better. And I enjoy training with them. I really liked that through line from this whole film of just really enjoying what he was doing. And the work seemed almost like a byproduct of that.
Yeah, I like that. I also picked up on that, but I didn't pull on the thread the same that you are. So I'm glad that you did. It reminds me, there's a moment where his coach or one of his coaches is saying, sometimes I'll see Jakob in the training center or whatever, and I'm like, oh, you're solo today. And he's like, no, everyone else just already left, and I just feel like I have a little more to do. But it's said in such a like flippant, light way that it's not the main focus. Like, he's a machine. He's always in there outworking everyone.
Totally.
So I think you're right. I think the enjoyment being the through line is a really cool thing. There was one moment that might be my favorite moment of the film, and that's when he's talking about BIG, Project Big, and his strategy versus Adam's strategy.
Yep.
And this was really fascinating to me because he's like, and in a like retrospective way, I can look back and say, oh, well, maybe Adam's approach was the wrong approach. But he isn't doing that. He's not saying Adam went about it wrong. He's saying Adam wanted to do several shorter trips to Flatanger, whereas I wanted to put all my focus at that time on qualifying for the Olympics and making sure that pressure was taken care of. And then I could take one longer trip to Flatinger that had less pressure. And we saw in real time Adam getting a little stressed that he might not make it into the Olympics. He was a late qualifier, and there were a few posts where he was like, I didn't make it today, next event, I'm hoping, fingers crossed. So, retrospectively, maybe Adam's approach was a more pressurized, stressful way to go about it. And of course, Jakob gets BIG done before Adam does by taking this less stressful approach. And the way he frames it is just Adam was doing this, and this was the way he was going about it. But I knew that I had to find my way. That just didn't seem like the right way for me. So I decided to do it this way. And I thought that was a really brilliant piece that almost you just run past. There's not a whole lot of focus put on that, but it was something I keyed in on pretty immediately.
I love this because this was actually, I have a huge star next to this.
Actually, I have a star next to it as well. That's funny.
Also, I like something you said there where you said they didn't really make a huge deal out of this. Because I feel like that feels common for all of this. Like this whole film, there was nothing that they were like, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of just, hey, like he's here. This is how he does things. And you can tell there's a lot of joy. There's a lot of effort for sure. But it feels very big picture, which I really liked. But the thing about this that I thought was wonderful is it's very hard to be excellent at a lot of things at once in climbing. I don't completely buy the whole idea that you have to specialize in one thing, otherwise you're sacrificing and you're going to be bad at everything. I don't think that's the case. Like people will say, oh, well, route climbing and bouldering, completely different sports even. It's like, no, they're not. Like I could go off on an entire tangent. I won't. But they're not. I think you have to be very intelligent about how you balance things. Yeah. And hearing Jakob through all of this, it shows, I think, one of the hardest battles for people that are very motivated and very just psyched. Like, it's very easy to be excited all the time and just want to chase rock climbing all the time. A lot of us have had that at least at some point in our climbing career. Especially beginners, they just want to climb every day all the time. And you can tell he still has that. He still loves climbing. And if you didn't love climbing, you wouldn't go out to Alphane while it's cold and foggy and rainy and a 99% chance of being unclimbable. You only do that if you're excited.
Yeah, totally.
But he can look at this. He can still have all that excitement and be very tactical. Mm-hmm. It's funny, some years ago, I've got a client, I've been working with her for a lot of years, but the very first time we worked together, this was back when I always had open spots on the website, and she purchased a 6-week plan, 6-week custom plan, and I had never heard of her. We had never met. She purchased it. I email her. I'm like, hey, yeah, tell me, what journey are we going on? And she was like, okay, I've been projecting the exact same route in Maple for about 8 months now. And I've not been training bouldering at all during that time. I've just been trying to send this route. In 5 weeks, I leave for Waco Tanks for the season. Help. Like, I want stronger fingers and I want to be powerful so that I can perform in Waco Tanks.
And I want to send my route.
Oh, yeah. She had finally given, she was like, the route's not happening. Okay. Like, and I'm over here just like, oh, Lord, why do you give me your hardest battles? Like, I never claimed to be your strongest soldier. Why is this being put on me? Like, and so, yeah, I was like, hey, here's the thing. We're going to do what we can.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a lot. And then when this is all said and done, we're going to have a conversation, post Waco season about how to never do this again. Like, and we've now worked together for a bunch of years. And actually this last year in a bouldering phase, she went out and just sent that route just
Nice.
because she had the base fitness from her
Hell yeah.
general capacity that we do as a boulderer. Fantastic. And I think she's going to send her first V10 this year. Amazing. But this was not it. Like this 5 years ago, not the play. Like,
Yeah.
didn't work out for her sport climbing season, did not work out for her bouldering season. And that is not because she wasn't excited and passionate, because man, it takes a lot of passion to go try the same route for months and months.
Yeah.
To be able, when I look at, I mean, this isn't completely fair to Adam, but if you look at Jakob's decision versus Adam's, and then even, Stefano Ghisolfi wanted to qualify for the Olympics, like he had mentioned it, then he was doing a ton of outdoor climbing. Like, if anything, that's kind of the spectrum of you have Jakob, Andra, and then Stefano from, most extreme to least. But Jakob was so tactical throughout all of this. And I thought it just seems like he balances it so well. Even when he sends Alphane, he comes down, he's excited, he's thrilled. He's like, oh, I did not think that could happen. Man, that's so fantastic. And then it ends up cutting to a shot of him being interviewed clearly in front of the boulder, probably, maybe 20, 30 minutes later, something like that. He's like, okay, this is awesome. This gives me plenty of time to train for the Olympics to make sure I'm in great shape for that.
Yeah.
And so he was all excited for this boulder, experienced it, got to have all of this. And then once it was done and once he had settled down, he's like, okay, cool. Eyes on the prize. What's next? And the fact that he could do this throughout all of this of, okay, like, yes, I'm very excited for Project Big. It's a thing I want to do, but I'm a professional. I need to make sure I have all my ducks in a row first. So I'm going to go qualify for the Olympics, even though the person I am kind of competing with for the first ascent of one of the hardest routes in the world potentially is doing 3 trips during this time that I'll be training. And that's going to tempt me. I'm not going to do it. Like, I'm going to stick to the path. And I feel like that really was persistent throughout this entire film. And it was cool to see. I mean, it goes to show, I think there are a lot of things that have made him the incredible climber that he is in such a well-rounded way. But being able to take that passion and focus it, I think that's a huge contributor.
Yeah, I agree. And I have a note here that just says, part of me wishes there had been more exploration of him doing BIG, Alphane, and the Olympics all back to back. Like, hardest route, one of the hardest routes in the world, one of the hardest boulders in the world, and then going to the Olympics. Because there's so many people who are like, comp climbing is nothing like outdoor climbing. Sport climbing is nothing like bouldering. Well, here's this guy who is just happily, bopping along, doing the hardest route in the world, the hardest boulder in the world, and going to the Olympics and medaling in the Olympics.
Yes.
As the oldest competitor, which is fantastic. I love to see people essentially proving so many people wrong. And I wish there had been more made out of that. However, I know that because I make a history podcast, there eventually will be an episode about this year that Jakob Schubert had, So in that regard, I'm a little glad that they didn't make more out of it, because I can put these things together as a wow, equals the hardest route in the world, equals the hardest boulder in the world, podiums in the Olympics. That's an amazing year like no one's ever had. I think that's pretty incredible.
Absolutely. And something that has really shocked me about Jakob, and I'll say Jesse Pills as well, who's also Austrian.
Mm-hmm.
They are 2 competitors who they've seen this sport change so many times, especially in bouldering. It is completely different than how it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, even 15 years ago when Jakob was still competing at that time. And to be able to stay at the top of the game that long and to really ride through these waves where many people have bowed out, or even if they haven't completely, they'll be like, I mean, yeah, I'm not doing as well. I'm competing because I have to. But, the style is so weird and wild now. Like, we hear a little bit of that grumbling from Adam of, yeah, I'm competing, but it's like, this style's a little funky and it's not for me so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where, yeah, and I mean, and that's completely fair. And if Jakob said the same thing of, I'm a crimp crawler. I'm a guy who likes to grab and pull. I like straightforward things. It would be very understandable for him to have that fixed mindset about this.
Yeah.
But man, he is kept up and it's amazing.
Yeah. I've used the word and I'll say it again. Adaptability, I think, is the most important skill a climber can have. And I think Jakob really, really embodies that.
Yeah. Maybe the last thing that I will mention as far as something I just really loved, it was one of his coaches talking about the idea of the Olympics, because this was before it happened. And I loved this phrase he used. And I don't know if this is just more common in Austria, but he said this would be a wonderful mosaic stone in his career.
Yeah, I caught that too. I thought that was cool.
I love that because normally we would use the phrase milestone, which, if we're reading as far into this as we can, a milestone represents distance. It's like a high water
This
mark.
linear thing. You've left something behind by reaching this place.
Yes. And if you don't reach this new distance, you fell short.
Yeah.
But a mosaic stone, that's just one piece in a big work of art.
Yeah.
I love that. And I mean, he even elaborates. He's just like, even if he doesn't win the Olympics, even if the Olympics didn't happen, what a career he's had. And yeah, I just really appreciate that. Like, I thought that was such a nice sentiment, and it felt so on point with how this entire film really portrayed Jakob. Of this is a very full career. There are so many things that to say, oh, well, this is the make or break thing is, I mean, it wouldn't do it justice.
Yeah, I really liked that phrase as well. In fact, I think the first time I watched it, I rewound it or just skipped it back because I thought he said mosaic stone, but I wasn't sure. And then when I skipped it back and listened to it, I thought it gave me that picture of like, oh, this is a whole career of all these individual moments and accolades and accomplishments, and missing out on one goal isn't the end of the world. It doesn't mean you've failed in your climbing career.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I think I feel like that's a really healthy way to look at things just for anyone.
Totally.
Like, it is, because it is so easy to be, have your blinders up and think, okay, this next thing is the thing. This is my high water mark. This is whatever the milestone. But yeah, I just love that idea.
Yeah, me too. Rewatchability for you.
I went back and forth on this.
Me too.
A lot. Okay, I'm gonna say a 4, but not because I don't love it. Like, I thought it was really good. I watched it twice. Very much enjoyed it, but it is just not the kind of film I rewatch.
Yeah, it was the exact same for me. I went back and forth between 4 and 5, and I ended up on the 5 just because I'll rewatch it again for the historical reasons. Like I said, eventually there will be a Jakob Schubert episode when I'm talking about climbing history, and I'll certainly go back and rewatch it then. But I think it made its point really nicely, so I don't think it has to be rewatched. It was more of a get to know this athlete. Here's who Jakob Schubert actually is, and I think it did a really great job of showing you.
Agreed.
Any takeaways, lessons that we haven't touched on? The big one for me was find your best strategies. Just because someone else is doing it that way doesn't mean that's the best way for you. You know how you operate. For years, I kept going to the rodeo wave with BJ Tilden on the days that made sense for him. Like, the colder, the better for him. And it was hard for me to send any of the really hard things on there because I would numb out so fast on the little pockets.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I accidentally, with Paul Corsaro, climbed on it in the sun in the middle of the summer and was like, oh, I didn't numb out when it was hot. I could do this route tomorrow that I had already written off as I may never do this route. And that led to me realizing I don't fall into the I need it colder to be better. I need to be able to be warm. There's a balance there for sure, but good conditions for me are different than good conditions for someone else. And I think we have to learn that. And Jakob obviously knows himself really well.
Yeah, I agree. You know what I think the point I made earlier, like that's for me is the big takeaway of, yes, follow your motivation to a degree, but don't let it guide you. Like,
Yep.
You need to have some sort of control over it. And if you do, I mean, this is a great example of this is a guy who kind of had his cake and ate it too. Like, yes, he was motivated for all these things, but he was very intentional. And so,
Yep.
Which worked out great. Like he still got to enjoy all of these things, but maybe it wasn't in such a gluttonous manner of, I'm going to go and only try Project Big until I do it. And then, Olympics be damned. Or I'm going to go spend 2 straight months at Alphane until I do it. And maybe he would have the motivation for that, but, he knew himself very well and figured out how to really thread that needle.
Yep. Good job by Yucca Films. I sort of wish there were more athlete profiles like this. Like I kind of want to get to know people in this concise way instead of having to piece it all together over, years and years of getting content. I thought this was a really cool way to do that.
Agreed.
All right. If you guys have films you would love for us to take a look at, speaking of which, and speaking of history, like I have been, I was thinking the other day, it might be really fun for you and I to do some 90s films and give those to the patrons of Written in Stone. Since the previous season was on the 90s, the upcoming season will be announced soon. But it'd be fun to do some of the great 90s films and review those and give those to the patrons.
Oh, I'd love that. That'd be great.
Awesome. And maybe we'll give them to the Power Company patrons as well, just to double up there. And I've got a list on our website of all of the 90s films you can get on the internet. Actually, I need to add the performance rock climbing from Udo Newman because he just put it on YouTube last week. So I'll add that in there, and then I'll link that list here as well so everybody can check it out. And you know where to find us, powercompanyclimbing.com, where you can learn, grow, excel.
You don't know.
This time, 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 this time.